Getting below 15% body fat wasn't easy. I trained hard, I ate clean, yet still never saw what my abs look like. I'd start to lose some fat and get stronger, but then life would get in the way. I would lose motivation, start to doubt my plan, cheat on my diet, and then look, many times I just gave up on the idea of ever getting six pack lean. But I eventually fixed the real problem, broke under 15% body fat, and finally settled into that 11 to 13% range, which I've maintained for the past 10 years. So if you're training and you've lost weight before, but never actually holds, I'm going to show you exactly what worked without starving myself and doing stupid bulking phases or just wasting hours in the gym when you could be spending time with your family and actually enjoying life. So at first, none of it really made sense. I was eating what the ripped bodybuilders ate on YouTube, training 4 to 5 days a week, and just keeping track of all of this in my head. I built a little bit of muscle, but you'd never have actually noticed it. My abs were still buried under the fat that I thought was never going to go away because of my genetics. And I remember being on a job site and like catching the reflector of myself in a window and noticing my belly was kind of bulging through my shirt a little bit. And I instantly felt embarrassed because if anyone had known how much time I'd put into the gym and eating clean, I figured they'll just laugh at me. I told myself it's probably just my body type or, bad genes, something that I couldn't really change. But then I would see other guys who were, running businesses or doing high performing roles who went from overweight to like proper lean with muscle. And that proved it wasn't just genetics, right? Something in my approach was wrong. And that's what pushed me to like really dig in to see what was stopping me from actually getting lean. 19, 20% body fat, that's where I actually was without really knowing it at the time. And even after hitting the gym or through my teens and in my early 20s, I still didn't understand nutrition or body composition. It turns out you can still look pretty normal in a t-shirt around about 20% body fat, but still be nowhere near lean enough to see your abs. So for most guys, abs start showing around that 15% body fat and they really pop around that 11 to 13%. The hard lesson was that it didn't matter how clean I thought I ate, how hard I thought I trained, until I actually got down into that range. My abs were never going to show up. Calculating my body fat and setting a weight goal was the easy part. The problem was that most guys are still making the same mistakes that I did and then wondering why they're still stuck right there for years. So my logic back then was pretty simple. If it's not working, just add more training, longer sessions, sometimes 2.5 hours in the gym, basically wasting a bunch of time and not getting anywhere with physical progress. More ab work, more cardio, more of everything. Thinking eventually it's all going to just catch up and one day I'm just going to be super jacked, right? But no amount of crunches or extra sets is going to get you out of the maintenance zone. It's like a blocked pipe. If you don't clear the blocked pipe, then cranking up the pressure isn't going to do a whole lot without clearing the blockage at first. So I was like stuck in this like hoping and praying kind of mindset, and like I'd magically one day just figure it out. And that's just delusional. Like, sure, training abs makes ab muscles thicker, but if you're still over 15% body fat, you're not going to see your ab definition anyway. So I stopped blowing time on ab workouts and adding more and more exercises, thinking that some new special angle was going to make something pop. None of that was moving the needle. And this forced me to finally figure out nutrition. And if any of this sounds familiar, training hard but still stuck, that is usually the exact starting point that the men I work with one-on-one have reached out for help. Details, tap the link right below this video. Now, here's how I actually rebuilt my diet from scratch that even guys with hectic schedules can follow along with. So you've probably heard like eat less, move more, 1,000 freaking times. And yet technically that is true. But if it was so easy, every guy already trying would already be lean today. I tried eating less and it backfired when I wasn't prepared for it. I got hungrier, irritable all day, lightheaded halfway through my workouts. So the problem wasn't just how much I was eating. It was what I was actually eating. Healthy foods like stir fries, nuts, chocolate protein bars, yogurt granola bowls, smoothies, and all that was racking up calories that I was completely overlooking. And none of it was actually filling me up for long. So I started weighing my food properly and then swapping the higher volume, lower calorie meals instead. So for example, steak and salmon pretty much became mostly chicken and lean beef. more egg whites than egg yolks. Bread and pasta and oats was mostly replaced with like potatoes, pumpkin, and more vegetables. I'm not ruling out things, I'm just, making little swaps. I pulled back on fats, switched to spray oil instead of free pouring olive oil or butters. I put those calories towards carbs and protein instead. And I still ate out usually twice a week, whether it's Asian food or steak and fries, but I factored that in because once I'd finally learned my numbers and how to track properly, all this was pretty simple, right? So the biggest lesson was that it's not just about the strictest plan, it's the one that's the most flexible and adaptable to kind of fit into every single week consistently without breaking that streak. But sorting out food only solved half of it. I still had to overcome a common myth that slowed my progress down and is keeping a lot of guys stuck right now. So at one point, I also tried to do bulking, which really just means getting fatter with the hope of building more muscle and then having to lose the same fat again with the hope of not losing the muscle that you may have gained with it, which is kind of hard to tell if you're not meticulously tracking it. And that sucked, not just because I was losing my leanness, but because if you're eating super clean, 4 to 5 meals a day, and constantly cooking and meal prepping, having to sit down, eat all the food, even when you're not hungry, it's very time consuming and it gets annoying very quickly, especially when you're working 45, 50 hours a week and you have a family and social and other commitments going on. So I decided never to bulk again. Instead, just to maintain 11 to 13% with slow, steady muscular gains every year after that. And I still built muscle without regaining a lot of fat. The best part of staying in this range was that it was more motivating because I can actually see my shape changing as my training progresses. Because when you have a lot of body fat, you just can't see what's going on. And that decision saved me from repeating those same cycles that I was stuck in for most of my life. But staying lean wasn't just about food and training. There was another thing working against me the whole time that nobody really told me about till I finally figured it out. I didn't know how much this mattered, but I had to learn this like most things. I'd be up late at night, scrolling on my phone or on the laptop, stressing about work and all these other things, not getting good sleep. And then the next day, I would still train, even when I was sore and running on empty. And that eventually caught up with me. I got sick more often, I missed sessions, I hurt myself, and being in that just put losing fat on the back burner and potentially losing muscle when I fell off because you'd hit a plateau and then I would blame my diet when really my body just needed proper rest that it wasn't getting. And at times I felt a little bit guilty, like, I'm not training hard enough, and I'd like try to bully myself into pushing even harder and go to the gym on a Saturday and get that extra work done. But once I learned to prioritize my sleep and take proper rest days and reduce stress as much as possible, then losing fat just got noticeably smoother because my hunger and my energy became far more controlled and predictable. And it's not always easy to fix this, especially if you have a young family, a lot of responsibilities, pulling at you all the time, frequent travel, having those dedicated rest days and proper recovery every single night does make everything easier. It's a big part of what helps me just get to 15% and get below it and stay there because the days I don't sleep well, I'm noticeably more hungry and I don't train that good. And this taught me something else that most guys completely misjudge that crushes their motivation, usually after they've made progress that they're kind of discounting a little bit.
Get six pack lean in 8 weeks, giant biceps in 30 days.
I believed all that stupid, old school magazine article hype crap, especially if there was like some, magical powder or some weird exercise attached to it. Turns out it actually takes way longer than what all these products and these influencers are promising. When I finally swallowed my pride and I hired a coach, it still took me at least 6 months to hit my initial goal to be six pack lean. And even that wasn't enough to get me into peak stage shape. What I found is that the most sustainable pace, the kind that's actually rewarding and motivating, is around about 1 pound or half a kilo per week. And look, even that can be too fast sometimes, especially when you've got work deadlines or you're off traveling every month, you've got young kids or new ones on the way, and just a lot of social events piling up. So during those stretches, half a pound or even a quarter of a kilo a week is completely fine. There's nothing wrong with going a little bit slower, because the faster you try to go, the harder it gets and the higher the chance you're going to quit when life gets difficult. So I stopped chasing the quick fixes and on the get ripped in 6 weeks and jumping between programs. Instead, I just got really stubborn and I just focused on getting good at the basics. But sticking with any of this long term also meant surviving something that I never actually saw coming until it kind of hit me in the face. And men who don't overcome this next thing, this next challenge, typically struggle the most with getting lean. So every office has that cupboard. Someone's always got chips, leftover cake, or chocolate and biscuits sitting right there staring at you all day. And if you add, like a team lunch order, drinks that turn into like this Thursday tradition, and then all of a sudden, we're making decisions before we even know that we did about our diet. And I didn't realize just how much my daily surroundings were shaping my results until I really paid attention to it. It wasn't just the office either. Also at home and traveling had this same kind of effect. If I just let it, the new environment, the same lack of a plan, it was easy just to go off the rails. So I started to control what I actually could. And what really helped was just not having junk food lying around, like, beers in the fridge, open packets of chips or chocolate. And I would prep my food and bring it to work with me. And I would spend more time around people who were into training. They didn't have to be bodybuilders. They just could be, health enthusiasts. And I built a simple plan for the harder days, just to eat around maintenance calories, make sure I get my walking in. And if I could, I would still train. So to me, it's kind of like running, a business off documented systems instead of relying on your memory with motivation. Once you've built this properly, it's going to run the same kind of wherever you are. You just kind of adapt things. And that shift is what really made this sustainable. Instead of something that just fell apart the moment that life gets in the way and it all crumbles. But even after all of that, one crucial shift hadn't actually happened yet. And this is what takes men, struggling in that 20% or above down to 15% in a way that's actually sustainable for their lifestyle. So what actually worked was not exciting or revolutionary. When I stopped guessing and I started tracking the basics, sleep, steps, food, photos, body fat, my average weight trends, and I let all the data tell me what to adjust. It just kept me honest in a way that, winging it could never do. And look, I admit I did push a little bit too far once, right down to 6% body fat, but that was for a bodybuilding show. I just wanted to know what that actually felt like, and I've never seen myself so ripped so I can experience a little personal challenge. And as you'd expect, it wasn't sustainable. I felt like trash every day. And because of that, I did a slow reverse diet protocol back up to that 11 to 13% range, which is where I've stayed for 10 years. Now I can eat a decent amount of food without getting fat and without needing to smash myself every day in the gym. Just 3 workouts a week, casual walks, and I'm all sweet. So once your system's actually built properly for you, then you can easily see what is working and what is not working. And you stop chasing fat loss like it's this, pot of gold at the rainbow that's never there, right? You make the right decisions and the optimizations to your plan when it's appropriate, which means you just become the guy who is lean and lives that way versus the guy who's overweight, who's always trying to get lean. And the thing is, you don't need more discipline. You just need a system that fits into your actual life, around your work, around your travel, your family. And look, most men who never fix this stay stuck in the same 10 to 15 pound range for like years. Not because they didn't put the effort in, they do, usually multiple times. But every time they're just doing it again, but they're a bit older. Right. And that's exactly what I fix with the men who work with me one-on-one, a plan that's built around your life, not one that has to bend your life and break it. And on the other side of that is what I have now. Lean year round, no more guessing, no more starting over every Monday or every January or whatever it is. And this isn't for everyone. This is for men who are serious about finishing what they start. The link to the details is below this video in the description. But even after everything I've just shared, some men will still make mistakes that are going to keep them from ever reaching their leanest physique, stuck for years instead of months. So to avoid that, go and watch this video next, which is the correct way to cut to 15% body fat following a simple process. Go watch this next.